Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Molly Gambhir and this is our continuous comprehensive coverage of the upcoming Trump-Putin summit. First, a quick look at the top stories making headlines. US President Donald Trump says he will not negotiate on behalf of Ukraine in his meeting with his Russian counterpart, and that he would let Kiev decide whether to engage in territorial swaps with Russia. Trump's statement comes en route Alaska. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his countrymen are counting on President Trump to convince Russia to end the war. President Trump had said he expects to hold a three-way meet, including Zelensky, if his meeting with Putin goes off well. Russian President Vladimir Putin visits Magadan in Far East Russia before heading to Alaska for the summit with President Trump. The meeting will be held at a U.S. airbase outside Anchorage. 1900 GMT, that's 12:30 a.m. in India. Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says she would nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize if he managed to secure a fair deal to end the war in Ukraine. Clinton said Trump has nothing to gain by capitulating to Putin. Dozens of Palestinians gather outside a makeshift soup kitchen in Gaza City, many clutching empty pots in hopes of receiving a portion of rice amid food shortages. 4 more people died of starvation and malnutrition in the territory in the 24 hours, taking the toll to 239. At least 164 people have died in monsoon rains in Pakistan in the last 24 hours. Majority of the deaths reported in mountainous Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. On the 4th anniversary of Taliban 2.0, Afghan Interior Minister slams negative people for defaming the country on Taliban rule anniversary, calls on the world to resolve issues without blaming Afghanistan. And breaking news coming in regarding the Trump-Putin Alaska summit that's going to be taking place in just a few hours. The Kremlin saying US President Donald Trump will be greeting his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on his plane after it touches down in Alaska later in the day. In fact, the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying he's told the state media ahead of Putin's departure to Alaska. Peskov says 1900 GMT or 12:30 a.m. IST, Putin is scheduled to land in Alaska, following which Trump will be meeting the Russian president. Meanwhile, Trump spoke with the Belarusian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, a close ally of Putin, over the phone. This hours ahead of Trump's summit with Putin in Alaska. And ahead of the highly anticipated high-stakes summit and the meeting between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, The latest update coming in, the Kremlin saying US President Donald Trump will be greeting Vladimir Putin at his plane after it touches down in Alaska. Remember, that's where the summit is going to be taking place. In fact, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, has told state media that when Putin lands in Alaska, Trump is expected to meet him and he will be greeting him. In fact, Trump spoke with the Belarusian leader as well, who, remember, is a close ally of Vladimir Putin. All of this happening just hours ahead of that meeting between the two leaders in Alaska on the Ukraine war, a highly anticipated meeting with high expectations. And let's go straight across now to our correspondent, Susan Teherani, who's been tracking those developments, is now with us for the latest. Let's just get in quick updates now. Susan, I have to begin by asking, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the symbolism and the optics at play here. We also got in statements from the two sides. US President Donald Trump calling it high stakes, Russia saying that their position remains clear and unambiguous. Of that also, we have the latest coming in of the way in which the US president will be greeting Vladimir Putin. A lot of symbolism at play here.
A lot of symbolism, even Alaska, being sort of a territory where the Russian president can sort of fly to the United States essentially without passing hostile territories in different countries in their view, and then meeting at a place where the president is hosting him. A lot of analysts believe that this is already a win for Vladimir Putin. He's gotten that credibility from the United States and the US president just going into this meeting, and also bringing so many officials that are related to trade when it comes to Russia. So he knows that President Trump is a businessman. He appreciates that. But also on the part of the president, really almost offering an olive branch to Russian President Vladimir Putin, as you mentioned, saying that he's going to step in on his airplane. We are also getting reports that there may be a joint press conference afterwards. Now, the White House is telling some reporters that joint press conference is only going to happen if the meeting goes well. If it doesn't go well, then President Trump is expected to have a solo press conference and talk to reporters. And again, talking about symbolism, we know that President Trump said that he's going to find out in the first few minutes whether or not Russia is serious. However, he's managing expectations. He's saying that I'm not going in there to negotiate on behalf of Ukraine. I'm trying to bring Russia to the table. We assume that means for President Trump, this meeting is important. It helps him demonstrate that he's a deal maker in many ways, but also ultimately how important it is for that second meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin to take place, possibly with the United States in company as well. So as you mentioned, there's a lot of symbolism. There's parts of Alaska that Russia still owns, a small island. So it's sort of, in a way, may appear like it's on neutral grounds, but nonetheless, for Vladimir Putin to step foot here in the United States, it's a big deal. And of course, world leaders will be watching as well to see how their countries are going to be affected, not just in Europe, but around the world. Remember, the issue of trade is very important, not only bilaterally, but also just multilaterally around the world as well, including India.
Indeed. Stay on with us, Susan. Let's also remind our viewers about what's happening at this point. The stage, of course, is set for that historic meeting between the two world leaders, US President Donald Trump and the Russian president in Alaska. Here's a quick look at what's on agenda and how the two leaders plan to broker a peace deal. What are the expectations? As per reports at this point, US President Donald Trump would try to get back some of Ukraine's oceanfront property occupied by Russia. But this would mean ceding territory to Russia for peace, despite Zelensky's firm opposition. Putin is eyeing the Donbas, a region in eastern Ukraine, comprising Luhansk and Donetsk, backed by European leaders. Zelensky rejected the land swap, remember, urging Trump to act in Ukraine's interests at the Alaska talks.
We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine. but they've taken some very prime territory. They've taken largely ocean, in real estate we call it oceanfront property. That's always the most valuable property.
And another key issue likely to come up during the talks, sanctions imposed by the US and European Union aimed at crippling Russia's economy and pressurizing it to negotiate a resolution to the conflict. The US Treasury Department has granted a temporary waiver on some sanctions until August 20th to facilitate the organization of the summit between Trump and Putin in Alaska. Another point likely to figure in the discussions, rare earth minerals, crucial for modern technology, including military equipment. The Telegraph reported that Trump is likely to let Russia tap into natural resources in Alaska and lift some sanctions. When asked if he plans to do so, Trump dismissed rare earth as a key issue.
Are you prepared to offer Vladimir Putin access to rare minerals to incentivize him to end the war?
We're going to see what happens with our meeting. We have a big meeting. It's going to be, I think, very important for Russia, and it's going to be very important for us, and important for us only that we're going to save a lot of lives.
A discussion on the security guarantees for Ukraine is expected to figure in the Alaska summit, while the US and European leaders are pushing for robust security guarantees to protect Ukraine. Putin earlier claimed that any Ukraine peace deal must ensure Russia's security.
Well, to achieve a peace, I think we all recognize that there'll have to be some conversation about security guarantees. There'll have to be some conversation about, territorial disputes and claims and what they're fighting over. All these things will be part of a comprehensive thing. But I think the president's hope is to achieve some stoppage of fighting so that those conversations can happen. These are tiny technical things that take some time to work out. So to have a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, you will need agreement from both Ukraine and Russia.
American troops and missiles in Europe are likely to feature in the talks. Russia sees NATO's expansion and military presence as a threat. It has demanded that Ukraine must renounce its plans to join the NATO. And let's go back across now to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani. Susan, a number of aspects here, but let's also talk about how the US president is planning to manage the whole question over the territory. Because at this point, Russia maintaining that its stance remains absolutely clear. There's also the question of Ukraine. At what point will it actually be a part of these discussions, while Trump has said that there will be a follow-up discussion with Zelensky?
Yeah, we were talking about symbolism before, Molly. I forgot to mention that, just having this meeting in Alaska, it also symbolizes just how far away it is from Europe and also from Ukraine. And it demonstrates, at least to the audience at home in Russia, that, they're just sort of secondary, and the real negotiation happens between the United States and Russia. Now, that's for the Russian audience. President Trump just recently made clear that he's not there to negotiate on behalf of Ukraine. But you can't really underestimate, just even the location that's in Alaska. When it comes to what Putin wants, it's clear that he doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. And if you look at how Europe has been reacting in recent years, not just in recent months, but Europe has been dragging its foot in bringing Ukraine into NATO in the first place. It doesn't seem, despite what they say, Europeans are very adamant in having Ukraine part of NATO. However, it's also going to be very hard to imagine that Ukraine is not going to get some kind of security guarantees from the Europeans if it's going to agree to give up some land. On the one hand, Russia wants part of the land that it has captured, but it's also asking at this point for land that it hasn't captured in the Donetsk region, as you mentioned. So how far are Ukrainians expected to go with that? And also, what does Vladimir Zelensky tell his people at home? He has a domestic audience as well. So yes, there is a question of how much Ukraine is going to be involved. But it appears that President Trump makes clear that ultimately these two sides have to sit and come up with some kind of plan. That seems easier said than done. The devil's in the detail. But nonetheless, it's just very hard to imagine that Ukraine wouldn't have to give some kind of concession. And it's hard to imagine that Europe is not going to have to pull itself together and give Ukraine some kind of security guarantee, whether it's to be part of the European Union in the long run, or maybe have European forces stationed in Ukraine at some part.
Right.
But they will have to also sort of give that to Ukraine.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Susan, thanks very much for getting us those updates and inputs at this point. Of course, we're coming back to you for further updates later. In fact, our principal correspondent, Siddharth MP, has been tracking those developments very closely as well and sent us this report. Take a look.
The American Arctic state of Alaska is a really interesting venue for hosting the impending summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Firstly, there's a lot of history when it comes to Alaska, US and Russia. While right now Alaska belongs to the US, it's a state in the US, there was a point of time almost 150, 200 years ago when Alaska belonged to Russia. We're talking about pre-1867. At that point in time, Alaska was seen as an Arctic wasteland or an icy desert. Nobody wanted it. It was seen as a liability because there was no technology to access the region, which is brutally cold, and it's an icy ocean. So nobody wanted that region, and for a pittance back in the day, in 1867, Russia sold Alaska for a pittance to the US. But cut to 2025, and this is a region that is highly sought after because there's a massive amount of oil and gas, natural gas, and also rare earth elements in that region. So this is the kind of venue that has been chosen for the two sides to meet, and also most importantly, it's also broadly being seen as a neutral venue, primarily because from both national capitals, be it from Washington DC or be it from Moscow, this is a venue that's completely far, and this is also more like a common meeting point for both countries. With video journalist Ajit from Murmansk in Russian Arctic, Siddharth MP, WION World is One.
Newer sensibilities and needs and
भारत के किसान, भारत के मछुआरे, भारत के पशुपालक, उनसे जुड़ी किसी भी अहितकारी नीति के आगे मोदी दीवार बन के खड़ा है। न्यूक्लियर की धमकियों को अब हम सहने वाले नहीं। सेना जो लक्ष्य तय करे उस लक्ष्य को अब हम अमल में ला करके रहेंगे। समय को मोड़ देने का भी यही समय है, सही समय है।
Prime Minister Modi delivered his longest Independence Day speech yet from the Red Fort, touching on a wide range of national issues, but one announcement stood out. He unveiled a new national mission aimed at protecting India's demographic balance. Our next report getting you the complete story.
मैं आज लाल किले की प्राचीर से कहना चाहता हूं, हमने एक हाई पावर्ड डेमोग्राफी मिशन शुरू करने का निर्णय किया है।
This was one of the big announcements by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Independence Day. He warned of a growing threat, a plan, he said, to change India's population profile through illegal infiltration. His message was blunt. This ends now.
और ये घुसपैठिए मेरे देश के नौजवानों की रोजी रोटी छीन रहे हैं। एक घुसपैठिए मेरे देश की बहन बेटियों को निशाना बना रहे हैं। ये बर्दाश्त नहीं होगा। ये घुसपैठिए भोले भाले आदिवासियों को भ्रमित करके उनकी जमीनों पर कब्जा कर रहे हैं। ये देश सहन नहीं करेगा।
The government says the new mission is about protecting the country, securing the unity, integrity, and rights of Indian citizens. This comes as government ramped up its crackdown on illegal immigration. Since May, several states have launched fresh drives. Authorities are verifying documents of workers in cities across India. The goal? Identify foreign nationals living illegally, especially undocumented Bangladeshis and Rohingyas posing as Indian citizens. India is believed to be hosting between 2 and 20 million illegal Bangladeshi immigrants. In Assam alone, the number is close to 2 million. In Orissa, nearly 3,800 illegal Bangladeshis have been officially identified. And metro cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Hyderabad have undocumented enclaves. The Rohingya issue is also in focus. Officially, there are 40,000 Rohingyas in India, but unofficial figures suggest the number could be as high as 75,000. Many hold forged Aadhaar cards and ration IDs. They blend in, while Indian citizens queue up for verification. In 2 months till July, India deported 1,880 illegal immigrants. In the same period, the Border Security Force caught 3,536 undocumented individuals. The Citizenship Act 1955 defines an illegal immigrant, but India still has no legal definition of a refugee. More than 2 lakh refugees from Sri Lanka, Tibet, Myanmar and Afghanistan live in India. But this issue isn't new. Infiltration was a core campaign issue for the BJP in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Now it's becoming policy. As the high-powered demography mission takes off, one question remains. Can India protect its borders amid concerns of divisions among people? This is no longer just about numbers. It's about identity. And this debate is far from over.
And Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has vowed to launch a massive signature campaign demanding statehood for the Union Territory. The Chief Minister announced his 8-week-long door-to-door campaign in all the 90 assembly seats in the Union Territory. He further added that he will be submitting the obtained signatures to the Supreme Court. Listen in to what he said.
From today, my aides and I will use these 8 weeks to go door-to-door in all 90 assembly segments for a signature campaign on the restoration of statehood. I will ask if they want statehood or not. If people are not ready to sign the document, I will accept defeat.
The Chief Minister referred to the observations made by the Supreme Court about the Pahalgam attack. At the time, the top court was responding to a plea seeking implementation of the 2023 Supreme Court order, which said Jammu and Kashmir statehood should be restored at the earliest opportunity after the assembly elections. However, the court stated that demands for restoration of Jammu and Kashmir statehood cannot ignore the Pahalgam terror attack and consequent regional security implications. The Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister says it is unfortunate that people of the region are being punished for a crime in which they played no role. Omar Abdullah recently wrote to leaders of all political parties, urging them to introduce a bill in the parliament to restore statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. Since Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into the union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, the government repeatedly has said statehood will be restored at an appropriate time.
मैंने इसी सदन में कहा है और फिर से कहता हूं कि इस बिल का जम्मू कश्मीर के स्टेटहुड से कोई लेन देन नहीं है। उपयुक्त समय पर जम्मू कश्मीर को स्टेटहुड दिया जाएगा।
The Omar Abdullah-led National Conference, part of the opposition bloc with the Congress, formed the government after winning 27 of Jammu and Kashmir's 42 seats in the assembly polls. Restoration of statehood was also a core issue during the election campaigning, with the Congress, the National Conference and others from that bloc promising to put pressure on the government to restore Jammu and Kashmir's statehood.
Focus now is that how tourists can return back. Locals are worried about.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition right here. We're taking a very short break. Stay with us.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
As India celebrates its Independence Day, we tell you how patriotic films have evolved with time. Meet the cast of Sare Jahan Se Acha and celebrate 50 years of the iconic Hindi film Sholay. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
Iran warns Israel of tracking its every move. If push comes to shove, Tehran is prepared to strike back. Border control or complete occupation? Amid protests and pushback, what is Netanyahu's real plan for Gaza? Yemen's Red Sea attacks come at a cost for its own people. Is peace out of reach? Famed footballer Ronaldo is now engaged, but how is he living under Saudi's laws unmarried?
Watch the West Asia Pulse with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is one.
This week on Wings, we cover what happens at the Red Fort on Independence Day, the recent engineering marvels of Indian railways from south to north and even the northeast. We also give you a roundup of great national parks and museums that celebrate India's independence. Only on WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. So in a few hours from now, all eyes are going to be on Alaska for the very eagerly awaited Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin summit in Alaska. And en route to Alaska, President Trump has said that he's pretty confident that something will come out of the meeting. And he says it'll be for Ukraine to decide on territorial swaps. The Russian President Vladimir Putin visits Magadan in far eastern Russia before heading to Alaska for the summit with President Trump. He lays a wreath of flowers at a memorial commemorating the US-Soviet Second World War cooperation. The Kremlin says that the American President Donald Trump will be greeting his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at his plane after it touches down in Alaska later in the day today. The Putin's plane is scheduled for a touchdown at about 1900 hours GMT.
लाल किले की प्राचीर से कहना चाहता हूं, हमने एक हाई पावर्ड डेमोग्राफी मिशन शुरू करने का निर्णय किया है.
So as India celebrates its 79th Independence Day, the Indian Prime Minister announces a demographic mission to protect the country from the dangers that are